Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Male Fertility Podcast. We're delighted to be joined by Jack Burke. Jack, welcome.
Thank you very much.
It's our pleasure to have you here, mate. We're going to cover something. Well, I think pretty much every week we cover something that is not talked about enough from a male perspective, and it's just yet another one of those topics. And we're really delighted that you're going to come here and share your personal perspective on testicular cancer. So yeah, thanks for joining us. And I guess without further ado, if you could give us a bit of a potted history of your story and leading up to kind of where we are today.
Sure. And thank you for having me. And I think it's a really important thing that you guys do. So it's my pleasure to be here. I am 31 now. I'm a journalist and writer from London. And God, 5 years ago, age 26, I was diagnosed with testicular cancer in April 2021. So pretty much 5 years ago to the date. I found a lump in the shower, wasn't looking for it, and obviously went into complete panic mode. Men seem to do one of two things in that situation. They either could just ignore it and bury it and try and put it out of their mind, or you do what I do and just become obsessed and like just go down a rabbit hole and get, totally stressed out and diagnosed as quickly as possible. It was pretty difficult because it was, 2021, COVID was still having a massive hangover on GP appointments. So it was very tricky to get seen quickly. But the potted history is got seen, got an ultrasound. They told me what it probably was, got referred to the Royal Marsden, who repeated the ultrasound, said, we're going to have to take this out. It's probably cancer. Took out the testicle, scanned me. It had spread to my lung. It had actually skipped the normal progression of like a cancer spread in like a linear upward way from the primary tumor site. Landed on my lungs, which meant stage 3 or 4, whichever the top one is, and that I needed the full dose of chemotherapy. So 3 rounds of something called BEP, which is the initialism for bleomycin, etoposide, and cisplatin, which is the proven treatment for testicular cancer. Had very good odds, but it was fucking tough. I don't know if I can swear on this. It was.
Yes, absolutely can.
Yeah, it was.
And I think very justified.
Yeah, it was like nothing you can prepare yourself for. However, it's worked. It's probably been 4 and a bit years now since I got the all clear. They'll keep a very close eye on me for the rest of my life. The scans will get progressively less frequent, but will probably be every 6 months now, along with regular blood tests. So it's over. It feels like a very distant dream that has obviously shaped my life in ways that you don't realize at the time. And even it's quite hard to realize looking back. But the story is that, 5 years ago, testicular cancer, probably about a year of treatment in total. And I'm here today. So it worked, hopefully.
Yeah, and we're all very pleased that you are and that you've had that all clear. It's great news.
Well, I hope so. I wonder if there's anyone that isn't. I don't know. Maybe there's a couple of people that wish
we'll put out a poll to accompany the.
It'd be nice to know if there's anyone on Earth that like really wishes you died. So I don't know. I'll never know the answer to that question.
No, I'm sure there aren't any. So, but yeah, it's that is quite incredible and a life-changing moment, like you said. It does kind of it alters your lens on life after that. So take us back to that moment, where you've had that scan and that news is delivered to you.
Well, the worst moment really was in the fucking shower. You're just like, no man is performing a test. Well, they should actually, but no men I know are performing testicular self-examinations. And you just suddenly find like a lump that wasn't there the last time you showered, and suddenly your brain just goes into overdrive. And I remember getting out of the shower, like stark bollock naked, just like puddle drying onto the floor, just like staring at my phone, trying to work out what it was. And all of the sort of WebMD sites and NHS sites said, try and be rational. What's the lump? What does the lump feel like? Is it, because most of the time it's just a varicocele or, some sort of cyst. So those are kind of squidgy and they move independently of the testicle. But if the lump is hard and like attached to the testicle, so when you move it, like they move together, that's the warning sign. And I had that. So, from that moment on, it was just like all panic stations. Managed to get an out of hours GP appointment in Tottenham like right under the shadow of the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, which was pretty grim as an Arsenal fan. I was like, this is pretty foreboding. And yeah, I mean, it was full COVID, so the sort of masked lady, masked receptionist, and yeah, she sat me down in this shitty, like prefab, stale, old GP's waiting room and whipped my trousers off, just like latex glove on, felt my testicle, and like immediately you could just tell from her face that she was like, oh shit. And then referred me, said I needed to go get an ultrasound, but because it was COVID, the wait for the ultrasound was something like 6 weeks. And I was like, there's no way I can, there's no way I can just sit with this for 6 weeks. So I immediately went on Google and found private ultrasound. I was lucky to be able to afford it. I mean, it's like 100 quid. It's not loads of money, but I'm aware that not everyone can do that. And booked one for the next day in Harley Street. I mean, best money I've ever spent, because went there, got the ultrasound. She was like, okay, it's most likely cancer. Take this CD to a hospital and you'll, be on the cancer pathway. You'll be seen within 2 weeks. But yeah, that moment in the ultrasound where I was told that it was cancer. I mean, it's kind of pointless to go through the cliches of what it feels like. You can, the world collapsing underneath you, you never think it would happen to you. Why me? Walking around outside central London afterwards, staring at like fat scaffolders, drinking pints and eating McDonald's. And I was just like, yes, I drink a bit too much sometimes, but I'm a pretty healthy person. No history of it in the family. And you just drive yourself mad for a little bit. And then eventually, well, for me at least, you sort of think, well, why not me? It's life, it's random. You got to just deal with it. I was very lucky to have credible parents and a family and friends and a pretty new girlfriend at the time. And we were together for the whole way through. We did break up eventually, but years later, I don't think it was anything to do with that. So I wasn't on my own. But yeah, fucking sucks. At 26, your life is just starting again after 2 years of COVID, and you get that diagnosis.
Yeah. Wow.
But it is what it is. Life goes on, and it's also tied up with like a very complex set of guilt in that there are, testicular cancer now is very curable. It wasn't the case until about the 80s or 90s with the discovery of this cisplatin treatment. I mean, I don't know what do you want me to talk about the history of testicular cancer and treatment protocols, but like the discovery of that drug in particular in the 70s, like flipped it on its head. And it suddenly made testicular cancer, which was previously a death sentence almost always, one of the most curable cancers. So the treatment is very brutal, but it works. It's like old school toxic heavy metal. The doctor gave me an analogy. It's like beating a dog with a stick to get rid of its fleas. Your whole body is attacked just to get rid of this one thing. And when you're young, you can take a heavy dose and normally you recover. But my point is that tied into the diagnosis of like, shit, why me? How unlucky was for me a sense of guilt that I had a cancer that was quite curable, and there were people with far worse odds and far more brutal cancers than I had, and children and whatever. And B, that I was getting it at a time where it was curable, and 40 years ago, I'd be dead. So it was a weird one. It was a weird cocktail of anger, grief, and guilt. So yeah, a lot to go through.
Definitely. And I think like you said, and I've certainly done the same, where you kind of looking over the garden fence at people who aren't living their lives in a way that is particularly healthy and are not like, when it comes to fertility, they're knocking out kids left, right and centre. And you're like, yeah, I was the same. I enjoyed a beer. I wasn't like running Ironmans or anything or like living some monk-like existence, but I wasn't unhealthy by any stretch. And then to find out that I was infertile, it's just like, I think it's the part of grief, but it's that the initial kind of unfairness that crops up. But like you said, life isn't fair, but life is very random, and who gets what.
Yeah, and I read a lot when I was diagnosed. I read a lot of cancer books. I read a lot of first person stuff about it, which probably contributed to the knowledge that there are people who've had it far worse than I did. But there was something that stuck with me. It was Christopher Hitchens, who's a great writer. He died of lung cancer, and I remember him writing about his diagnosis, like to the dumb question of why me, the universe barely bothers to give the response, why not? And I was like, yeah, I guess that kind of is it, especially when you're not religious or anything and you sort of believe in the randomness of life and the universe. In a way, it's quite comforting that, even though it's terrifying, that I think the self-pity didn't last very long for me. And I'm sure my friends and family would speak to that, but I kept it very private, only told a couple of close friends, and just sort of got on with it. And there's the only thing you can do when you get something like that is you sort of just have to get on with it. You just like crack on. You don't really have a choice. And that's the interesting thing about cancer and surviving cancer, is that the treatment itself, whilst physically grueling, is you can kind of abdicate to any mental responsibility for it. You become, people speak about fighting cancer a lot, but you're less an active participant in the fight and more like the battleground between medicine and tumor. So you're kind of just, especially when you're just like fucks lying on the floor, barely able to open your eyes, you're just like, you're sort of, everything's being done to you. You don't really have much engagement other than sort of mental strength. It's the afterwards where, the treatment's over and you've got to restart your life. That's, for me, was the harder part. When you are sort of discharged and you're just on your own and you've got to like restart your life. I'm sure many people who've been through it would say the same thing, that was in many ways the hardest time.
Yeah, man.
It's also funny how much it's bumming both of you out, me talking about it. Like, it just has, that's the funny thing about cancer, is it's such a powerful word, and it's a disease that lives so vividly in our imaginations, and it's so rich in metaphor, and the way we talk about cancer as this like invading force and give it a personality, and the way that it operates is kind of human-like. It grows, it takes over, it metastasizes. And it's an enemy with many faces, because cancer is like an inappropriately broad term to describe what is basically 5,000 different diseases, which is why some are curable and some aren't. Like I said, testicular cancer is now pretty curable. But like, it does always still make me laugh a little bit how much people just shut up when you talk about cancer.
1 in 2, isn't it? The stats roughly. And the way I kind of can reconcile that is zooming out a bit and going, well, that's still 1 million and 2 million, for example. But I think, because so many people are touched by it, either personally or usually one person removed in their life. So it's that thing of like, this could happen or will happen to us or someone that we love. And I think you said probably the most profound thing I've ever heard, like about the battling. We say, oh, you're battling cancer. But no, our body is just the battleground. And that was just incredible.
Yeah, you're right, Jack. It's that you kind of have these conversations and you automatically go into how do I navigate this, because it is such a raw thing. Like, this is life or death in some way. Well, in all ways. But one thing me and Shaun are really passionate about is obviously men advocating for themselves. And you found the issue, and even though how scary it was, you had the bravery to go, and even in the midst of COVID and everything, you went and got it sorted. And so many men may have sat on that for a while. I don't know if someone's listening to this and has any kind of doubt, go, because we recorded last year an episode on testicular cancer, and the week afterwards I've been having like testicular pain. And I said to Shaun, I'm going to go and get checked. And I didn't have any major concern, but just because I'd had that conversation with others, it was like, I've just got to go and get checked. And I did, and everything was okay. But even then, you go in there and you think, I hope it's all right. But to actually actively go there and knowing that possibly it's really not going to be, and you're going to have this treatment, or you don't know what the future looks like with it. If this conversation makes one guy go and do it,
Yeah, I mean, I had this very sort of theatrical Italian doctor who's like, you know, it's very, very good that you come in here. And he's like, I see men, and he does like, he gets his hands under his testicles like that. And he's like, men come in with testicles the size of oranges sometimes. They've left it so long. And personally, I mean, I couldn't imagine ever doing that, but I know that some men do just bury stuff. And again, like, I don't know how deep you want to go into this, because I've written about it a lot. I've was writing a book about it. I've paused it for now, about cancer, and it's like it's quite a feminine coded illness, cancer, and you know, even the way that it operates, like it grows inside somebody. There's a lot of, I feel like the conversation is slightly broader around female cancers and like breast cancer and stuff, whereas with men, if you get it at this age, it's normally a really embarrassing cancer, like fucking testicle cancer or arse cancer, or something just like horrific, like a childhood bone cancer or whatever. Or it's when you're old and it's like prostate and gurgly shit. So men are far more reluctant to go and get tested and checked.
I think like that definitely come on to that and the kind of the issue around men and masculinity and stuff. Then one element that goes hand in hand with testicular cancer is the threat to fertility. Like how, or was that addressed for you, and if so, how?
Two things. Number one, there's a link between developing testicular cancer and already being infertile. So that worried me, especially as I'd never had a pregnancy scare with anyone. So that was on my mind. And then before starting chemotherapy, you're always advised to go and bank sperm, because the treatment renders you infertile, usually temporarily, but sometimes permanently. So in order to, you know, if you wanted to have children and you were rendered infertile, they want to make sure you've got some sort of pre-chemo cum in a freezer somewhere. However, that appointment was also to test whether I was already infertile or whether there was an issue that I had never known about. So yes, that was pretty stressful. Did want children at some point. I do want children at some point. But luckily for me, I was fertile. It was all fine. So I knew that I had that on ice. I mean, we can talk about the Hammersmith Hospital wank bank if we want, and how grim and funny and bizarre. One of the most bizarre elements of treatment was going to the andrology clinic there. And, you know, I know for a fact, both of you have done this. You've clearly spoken to many men that have been there, but, you know, an intimate private act, you're just doing it in like a strip lit, tiny little room on the NHS with a reclining dental chair and a woman who, you know, sees 50 men a day. So it's totally normal for her, but it's absolutely mortifying for you as a 26-year-old to go and be handed like a little plastic cup to take next door. And I was very curious about what they'd provide you as stimulus. And it was no Wi-Fi, no phone signal, connect to the Wi-Fi, obscene websites blocked, obviously. Yeah, just there was in the corner like a tiny little old JVC TV and a remote. Turned it on, and there was a DVD in there called Tits a Knockout Volume 2. And it was I'll send you both a photo of it because it's hilarious. But it was topless boxing, like old like 90s lads mag, Zoo magazine porn of literally just women sparring topless. And I was just like, who is this?
What is this? Yeah.
And I reached out to the hospital afterwards and I was writing about it, and I was like, can you just clarify for me, like, was there a meeting about this? Like, who decided that this was what men would want? And they said, yeah, there was a meeting about it. And my favorite thing is there's like, it's on the hospital archive, like Tits and Knockout Volume 3 on like their hospital spreadsheet. However, I have since been back to get, you know, to be tested post-treatment, and it's all fine. It's come back, but the TVs are gone, unfortunately. So there's no more Tits and Knockout in Hammersmith Hospital, unfortunately.
Wow, that no signal, Wi-Fi blocked. That's
You just have to like close your eyes and fucking think of England and just like, you know, really sad 4 minutes.
We have a
withdraw
term
from the memory bank.
Yeah, exactly.
We have a term for that on the podcast, and we call it wanxiety. Like you get
Really?
like anxious about going into that room.
By like my third visit, I was like a wily old pro, didn't walk off a duck's back, didn't care anymore. And I suppose that's one of the interesting things about like any big life event or big health scare is it's amazing how quickly you get used to it, or how quickly the extraordinary becomes ordinary after, you know, a couple of weeks. You know, I would never have thought that I'd be, you know, after my 4th hospital stay, would just be, this is normal for me now. The first one was terrifying, and then by time 3 or 4, and it's a little bit like the wank bank. You human beings are incredibly resilient, and you don't know how resilient you are until you're forced to be. And I think, I don't know anyone, and people also, it's very annoying when people are like, oh, it's so brave of you, you were so strong. So you don't really have a choice, you just got what you meant to do. Like, it's just literally one foot in front of the other. And people, yes, fine, I suppose I would say the same thing to someone if they were going through it and I hadn't. But it's also, it was always struck me that I didn't, it's just your only option is to do that. So it doesn't really strike me as that brave in a way, which might be controversial. I don't know, but that was my.
No, I think it's it's very apt, really. And like you said, what's the other choice? Just
Exactly.
When they spoke to you about obviously fertility and the issues it could cause, how much information did they actually give you, or was it just like a passing comment, or was there no support, nothing?
Most of my knowledge of male fertility came from the article that I wrote, which is How I Met Shaun. Even having been through it and probably being more aware of it as an issue than your average man, my only knowledge was like, am I infertile? Am I not infertile? I'm fertile. Fine, crack on. Like, there was not much. Yeah, none.
No.
I'm going to be honest, which is probably not a surprise to both of you. Did they give me any tips about keeping it? No, like nothing really. It was you either you are or you aren't, and there you go. I mean, the andrologist, spoke to me about sperm quality and the different parameters they were looking for, and everything was pretty normal. So perhaps they didn't feel the need to give me any more information. Was brief.
It was brief, yeah, because it is one of those things that, as you've highlighted, given time, the body can recover, especially when you're younger. And for a lot of people, though, that would cause significantly more anxiety on top of the anxiety of the cancer already. And just to have that conversation of, if after your treatment it could be 5 years and we'd be looking at this projection and we keep track of it, but to have no kind of support and no aftercare, especially around the fertility, when it's becoming more of a public thing now in terms of male fertility and its significance and how it's affecting men, it's just a shame that we haven't caught up there.
I had to ask to be tested again afterwards. I had to go, and they were like, I wanted to know if it was permanently gone or whether it was going to come back. And there's not normal that they invite people in again to come and get tested. I had to request to go and get tested. They were like, oh, if you want to start having children and you can't, then we'll come back to us. If it's an issue, if you run into issues, then you can. That's what we normally advise. If you're running into issues, you come back and get tested. But I mean, there was no problem when I asked it. They were absolutely fine with it, and they were very nice. But like, it had to come from me to request a follow up post, 3 rounds of like one of the most toxic chemotherapy regimes that's going.
It's quite incredible. Perhaps a topic for what could be a whole episode in its own right, but our health system and why we have to push and ask, and like that. You were going through one major life-changing situation, but with something riding along in the sidecar as well, which is in its own right life-changing, like that, the potential knock-on to your fertility. And you were kind of thrust into that as well, head first. You've gone deeper into this, and it'd be interesting from your perspective, because you're almost on the outside looking into this problem, and that you've really then become more aware of male fertility, the declining rates. I think you spoke to Alan Pacey as well, didn't you? As part of it. So yeah, what's been your major kind of takeaway from that?
I mean, this is maybe the indictment on me, but I've kind of stopped thinking about it because I've luckily, it's not something that I have to worry about so much anymore. So it hasn't been on the forefront of my mind. But whenever I talk to people about it, the things that stuck with me personally is the lack of conversation around it, the fact that most men don't have any idea of what they should be doing, of what could potentially affect their fertility, and stuff like that. But mostly the thing that made the biggest impression on me is the kind of like IVF stream and funnel, and the fact that men are often not looked at as a factor in a couple struggling to conceive. And it seems like an enormous scandal that no one's. I mean, for me, it was frustrating because the editors took a lot of that shit out. I wanted to talk a lot about the IVF. Scandal's the wrong word, but basically, like the pathway that GPs are taught to funnel couples struggling to conceive down, that it sort of ignores the male factor, sometimes entirely or sometimes just a little bit. That's the thing that stuck with me the most from my research. And there was always there's Jonathan Ramsey. I remember he told me about a couple that struggling to conceive in Scotland, were sent to an IVF clinic, did 7 rounds of IVF. All of them resulted in a miscarriage.
That's Alistair. We know him.
Oh, you do? Right, yeah.
Yeah.
And then maybe it was you that told me about it. No, it was Jonathan Ramsey. And then flew down to see Jonathan Ramsey, varicocele fixed, natural conception a few months later. I mean, that's an extreme example, but it's indicative of that. And whenever I talk to people about male fertility, that issue that I think is the most interesting. I don't have as much of an opinion on declining fertility rates. I don't know. No one can seem to agree on where it's coming from. So I sort of stay clear of that conversation. But yeah, the fact that, and it's not just like, oh, poor men, like the fact that women have to go through these like pretty grueling treatment plans when there might be a really simple fix or might be a simple modification. It's frustrating looking in on it. And, you know,
there's definitely an aspect of fertility treatment, especially for men, that they don't say it, but some people do, but you only need one. You need that one sperm. That's what's kind of thought of from a medical point of view. And then, but actually the cause of that infertility isn't looked into. It's just left.
Yeah.
And that is a bigger conversation about how that impacts a man. And I can say that because that's where I still sit. Like my infertility, there is no reason for it. They can't find it. My genetics are fine, but you know, biologically I'm fine. I had a varicocele. They sorted that out. Didn't make much of an impact. You know, the only thing that really affected things was when I changed my lifestyle. You know, and even then, it was in terms of improvements, it wasn't the vast improvement they wanted to see. It didn't cure things overnight. It just helped things get better in terms of the quality. So I feel that it's something that I'm very passionate about, and so Shaun, obviously. But these guys need to know. You can't just go, yeah, well, give your sample, we've got one, on you go. Because as like Alistair found out, there was more that could be done, and those years of heartache were unnecessary.
Yeah,
and I don't know how many men me and Shaun have talked to that have given a similar story. Like I can count. I know men that have just had their varicocele sorted or had something else sorted, and they've conceived naturally because it's the problem has been addressed.
You've just sort of reminded me of something like the fertility and cancer that I've didn't mention is like, and again, I can never get a straight answer from doctors about this. It's like, is it better to use pre-chemo sperm or post-chemo sperm? Like, is there any inherent danger of like having gone through chemotherapy and your sperm somehow either being toxic or whatever, or is it better to use like pre-chemo sperm, which might have like cancer in it? You know, no one could really answer that question for me. It seemed to be that sperm regenerates every couple of years or every 3 to 6 months. Like you might know the answer to that. So theoretically, it should, if you wait long enough, it should be fine post end of treatment. But yeah, and also like, is it better to use like a frozen younger version of yourself? Again, it's an interesting question that's not really spoken about. I've just had to make the decision of whether to keep the samples that I did 5 years ago in the NHS freezers, because you get 5 years free and then you have to start paying. And I'm probably going to keep them on there because I may as well, because like this again, it's always bloody Italians. This lady, she's like, there's so many bad things that can happen. You could be in a car accident, your remaining testicle gets crushed. You could be playing football and get kicked in the... I was just like, she literally ran through about 15 scenarios in which my last testicle could be destroyed. And I was like, okay, I don't think she was even upselling me. She was just like, she just went off on one.
Well, I was going to say it was a fantastic pitch.
Yeah, no, and I was like, okay, get my credit card out. I think she was just like, she just was quite passionate about it. And I was like, fine, definitely going to.
You've got it there. It's done. You know, it's a few £100 that you could, probably
for that, mate? It's
use
like
elsewhere, but it's a
100p.
nice,
Yeah.
a nice safety net to have. But yeah, it's very interesting points, and you know, Alistair's story, we've had him on the pod, so we can kind of talk about it, but it's open, it's out there. But yeah, it's incredible. And he actually, I might have told you about this before, it was him who, after years of speaking to many men, he's told us the most heartwarming story I've ever heard of those rooms, with the misery rooms, the wank rooms. He's gone in, and there was a box full of magazines. He's taken the lid off the box. He said it's like it was like you get those big boxes that carry printer paper in. You get the, like, once you tear around, you get the lid. Within the lid on the underside was all these messages of support from guys who have been through the clinic, just like, yeah, you got this, like, we're here, like, you know, you're not alone. It's just incredible.
Yeah.
Like, just
It's very moving.
it's that silent support that was there, that from these people who you would never know. Like, could be walking past him in the street, but they were there for him. But you mentioned, you know, that initial doctor that you saw mentioning that blokes will often leave, and that this is a problem throughout men's health, whether it's like testicles, anything else, any other signs, symptoms. Why aren't men being more proactive in our own health?
From my personal experience, the men in my life, they actually are. So it's hard. I'd have to theorize as to why it would be. I imagine it's some combination of, you know, invincibility, wanting to look strong, embarrassment, not taking as good a care of yourself as perhaps the fairer sex. But I do think that's changing, to be honest with you. I don't think it's as true as it was even 10 years ago. I think it's probably often tied up with a out of sight, out of mind mentality, and like, you'd rather just not know and just crack on and hope for the best, especially with something like a fucking lump on your testicle. Just ignore it and hope it's fine. Because once you know, and once you're told, then your life changes forever. So I imagine it's probably a combination of those factors. But I don't have a good answer, because it's not how I am, and it's not how my friends are, thankfully.
No, but that's the thing. It's, I don't know if anyone has a good answer, really. People do generalize and theorize, don't they? And say, oh, it's because we're like, men are this way or that way. But it's about airing thoughts and conversations of different perspectives, and I think different things will resonate with different people.
But also, like, you know, online communities are wonderful. Like, you guys have one. I did there's the subreddit. There's a subreddit for every cancer, and if you want to know how people are actually thinking, and I've told this to doctors before, it's like, go have a little look on there, and you'll see the anxieties that people are going through, and incredible like support systems. And for me as well, like Macmillan, the cancer charity, the hotline, incredible. Sometimes you don't want to burden your loved ones, and you just want to have a rant to somebody. So Macmillan are a 24-hour, you know, cancer nurse, often like retired cancer nurse specialists who like specialize in a particular type of cancer. You phone them, you can get any answer to any question you want. You can have a moan, and they also keep your notes on. You have like a profile, so you don't have to repeat everything to everyone each time. They can just like bring you up, and they get a quick history, so you don't have to run through it every time. So yeah, and they would say to me, you know, men call just as much as women. So I'd like to think that potentially this stereotype is changing, but you know, it's not true of everyone.
Yeah, it's there's some way to go, isn't there? In especially men, I think men's education in their health. Yeah, in terms of cancer linked to fertility, what would you like to see from maybe your experience or what you've taught to other people? So, in terms of cancer and fertility, what would you like to see more from those consultants, those professionals that actually do have sit down interactions with these very anxious people?
I just think maybe a little bit more information at the time, and that it's not a binary. Yes, you're fertile. No, no, you're not fertile. That there are, things that can be done, things that you should look out for, and things that you can do to preserve your fertility. But like often it is secondary to the cancer. Like, you're so scared about cancer that like fertility often is a secondary concern, and the doctors with whom you're interacting are oncologists or surgeons for whom fertility is not a primary area of expertise or focus, perhaps it should fall on the andrologists. When you go to a clinic, that you're given a little bit more information when you're there about your options. But again, I don't know whether that is the case, because I was given a sort of clean bill of fertility health, so they maybe didn't interact with me as much as they would with a guy whose results were not optimal. But perhaps they love a leaflet in the NHS. There was no fertility leaflet, but it could be as simple as that. It could be as simple as, if the results are not what you want, check out Nexus Fertility, or go, here are some resources. They're good with that for everything else. And, probably the simplest change was just to be something like that, just to give them an extra leaflet, literally.
Yeah.
And I think that could answer a lot of people's questions if the news is bad.
It's one of those things I don't think like you said, the primary concern at that moment is the cancer.
Yeah.
But the view is to survive the cancer, to then move on with life, and at some point, fertility might become the primary concern. So
of course.
It's that pathway you spoke about earlier. It needs to be part of that pathway, but where that comes out in terms of where you get to that bit of path, just needs a bit more thinking. But as you said, if you haven't experienced that, it might be there, and
it might be there quite.
Yeah.
Also, I imagine the doctors would probably say, your fertility is the price. If, for example, that your fertility is the price you have to pay not to die, and I think maybe a lot of people would probably take that, unfortunately. So I imagine there's an element of that mindset for the doctors as well.
Yeah, and that's a massive, harsh sense of reality there, isn't it?
Yeah,
and have those conversations with people and support to process that, because that's a massive thing you've just said. I'm hypothesizing, but I mean, I can only speak highly of. I had wonderful doctors, I had amazing nurses, I had all the support in the world. So I had a really great experience with the hospitals, and I'm sure if I'd have gone to them with my concerns, if I'd had concerns about fertility, I imagine the support is there, especially somewhere like the Marsden, which is probably the best cancer hospital in the country, if not the world. So I can't speak to how they would interact with you if you were struggling. But I think cancer's a tricky one, because often the men are already infertile, and in that case they need support, and I hope that the support would be there. But from my experience, there wasn't much information, and potentially that was because my fertility seemed to be fine and has since come back.
Yeah. On that point, and I completely understand if you don't want to go down there too much, like of course, like heavily caveating that you're not a medical professional, but what is it around the fact that people who are already infertile are more likely to develop testicular cancer?
I don't know whether that's the link, or whether it's, if you develop testicular cancer, there's a chance whatever's happened there has rendered you infertile.
Okay.
I don't know which way the link is. But there is a link. I don't know whether being infertile makes you more likely to develop testicular cancer, or whether it's the other way around. So I don't know. But I was fucking shit scared, I gotta be honest with you, because I'd never got a girl pregnant, and I was like, So that was a week of extra anxiety. But it all, in a way, feels like a distant dream. It's amazing how quickly you sort of seal off an experience and move on from it. It definitely leaves an imprint in your DNA and your coding, but it does feel like a past life at this point. And to your point, I mean, I remember interviewing you, Shaun, and you said how important it was for men. I think you used the word to sit in the mud and like talk to other men. That for me was totally the same impulse that I wanted when I was going through testicular cancer. All I wanted to do was talk to men 5 or 6 years ahead of me, probably someone in my position now. And I was lucky enough to be connected with a couple of them. And that alone was like the single most helpful thing. There was one guy called Stu who was had pretty much identical diagnosis to me. He was a friend of a friend of a friend. Lovely guy. We spoke on the phone a couple of times for like an hour each. And that, more than any doctor, reassured me. So I know you both know how valuable that is, but I would just like to echo it from my experience.
Thank you. Yeah. And now you are that. You are doing that for other guys. So, yeah.
And for what it's worth, you know, if anyone is listening to this and wants to talk, feel free to like put my Instagram or something on the episode and just send me a message. You know, I'd love to pay it forward or pay it back or whatever. Frustrating thing is I literally have said this to the hospitals. I was like, you should create a buddy system or a buddy database or a buddy network for young men who don't have access to the contacts that I had. Literally fucking pin my name up on the hospital wall and they can text me. They were like, oh, we'd love to do that, but, you know, safeguarding issues and blah, 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 and data protection and GDPR. And like some of these kids are 16 to 25, which technically is a young cancer patient, so they have to have extra safeguarding, you know. And I was like, oh, I get it, but that's very frustrating. Yeah. There is a great charity called Oddballs, which is based in Norwich, which does a lot of educational they love a lot of leafleting in hospitals and schools. They will connect you with a ball buddy, as they call it. So there is that, but it's not a London-based thing. I think they're trying to become national. But again, if anyone's listening, you know, you're very welcome to reach out.
Yeah, I love that. And we'll put your Instagram handle in the show notes. But yeah, it's really insightful. And this will be going out in Testicular Cancer Awareness Month.
When's that? I didn't know. How am I not aware of that?
So that starts.
I don't really know when that is.
This is good timing because it starts on Wednesday, the 1st of April, and this will go out on Wednesday, the 1st of April.
So April is Testicular Cancer Month.
Yeah.
April Fool's Day, it begins. How lovely.
April Fool's Day.
April Fool's Day, very good, very good.
Well, on that note, you know, you've talked about your experience and that you are willing to kind of, if needed, and if people wanted to reach out to you to help, and like you said, pay it forward or back. We haven't like it's one way or the other. Either way, pay it somewhere. But for any people that are listening that have perhaps experienced this or are just concerned, what would you want any listeners to take away from your story and everything that you've learned about yourself, or whether personally or through your research since?
Just don't ignore it. Go. If you're suspicious, no one's going to be annoyed at you for wasting a GP appointment if you think you've got a lump on your testicle. And from my opinion, and you know, sometimes it's worth paying £100 to go and get a private ultrasound. Yeah, you know, not everyone can, but like that sped things up so much. And you know, I'd caught it really early and it already spread to my lung. You know, the lump's pretty small. So, you know, the longer you wait, the worse it could potentially be. So yeah, I'd always say to people, just don't ignore it. Don't bury your head in the sand. It might be nothing, but it might also be something. So yeah.
Nice one. Don't let your balls get the size of oranges.
That's perfect advice, buddy. And I think it's an amazing place to finish there. So thanks so much for coming on, Jack.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Really appreciate it. Everything that you're doing in this space, because I know you're actively talking about it. So it's amazing. And thanks for coming on.
Nice one.